We're in the fourth chapter of Nedarim, and we're going through a series of Mishnayot which deal with someone who's sworn that he won't receive any benefit from his neighbor. Really interesting. Why would you want to do that? And it feels a bit like a breakdown in relationships. And maybe these kind of breakdowns are very common all over the place, maybe in modern times too. But it seems as if in the time of the Mishnah, that might erupt into a situation where someone says, look, I will swear that I won't benefit from you, or I swear that you won't benefit from me. We know the rabbis don't like oaths, but nevertheless, we need to figure out, well, okay, what is and what is not permitted in these situations of relationship breakdown where the oath has been made. And in the second Mishnah, we learned actually there are certain exceptions. In other words, someone sworn not to benefit from his neighbor. So someone's made this oath. Nevertheless, shokeret shiklo, he can pay off his shekel, he can give the annual shekel due to the temple. Ufore et chovo, he can actually pay off his debts. This is amazing. He can pay off his debts. Umachazir lo averato, he can bring back a lost object. That's a mitzvah to bring back a lost object. But where the benefit is, where in a place where people actually take payment for returning lost objects, the payment or the benefit should become hekdesh, should become sacred. Because that's the essence of the vow. You say such and such should be like a korban to me, i.e. it should be like hekdesh, should be dedicated to the temple. So the third Mishnah, and this is really where we're going to jump in today, it just continues this long list of things which someone is allowed to do, even though he swore not to get benefit. So he can select his truma. It's not quite clear whether we mean he's donating truma on behalf of his neighbor's pile, or whether he's actually helping his neighbor by sorting out the truma. But one way or the other, he can help him give truma. It's a mitzvah. Uma asrotav, and his tithes, learnt atzor, with his consent, even with his consent. Uma kriv alav kinei zavot, and he can offer up for him bird sacrifices of zavin and zavot. Kinei yodot, the bird sacrifices of women after childbirth. After childbirth, women have to bring a sacrifice, or if they can't afford a sacrifice, a pair of doves. Sin offerings, guilt offerings. It's really interesting here. So this must be someone who's a Kohen. So he's a Kohen. He's sworn either not to receive benefit or not to give benefit to his neighbor, but he can still offer up his neighbor's sacrifices if he's a Kohen. And I think that the reasoning here is that he's not acting. He's not acting on his own behalf here. He's, if you like, he's acting on God's behalf by offering up these sacrifices. That's why he's allowed to do that. It doesn't come into the category of personal benefit. And he can actually teach him Torah. He can teach him Midrash and Halacha and Agadah, because you're not allowed to take money for teaching Midrash and Halacha and Agadah. It's a famous Halacha. The Rambam writes about it at length in his commentary on the Mishnah. You can't take money for teaching Torah. So there's no benefit, in other words. Because there's no benefit, he can do it. He can do it. But Lo Yelamdenu Mikra. He shouldn't teach him Mikra. He shouldn't teach him Tanakh. And it is permitted, or it seems that it's permitted in the time of the Mishnah, that it was permitted to actually pay someone to teach you Mikra, to teach you how to read Torah or Tanakh. Torah Nevi'im Ketuvim. You could pay someone. And of course, that means if he is teaching him, he is actually effectively getting someone is getting a benefit. Someone is getting a benefit. So that is why it's forbidden. But he can teach his children mikra. Really interesting. He can teach his children mikra. Why is that? Well, there's a mitzvah to teach the children mikra. And whether the mitzvah is fulfilled by the parents or whether it's fulfilled by somebody else on behalf of the parents, we're still fulfilling the mitzvah. He can, and it's, you can see the theme of the mitzvah running through all of these exceptions. If it's a mitzvah to teach the children, he can teach the children. And then moving slightly out of mitzvah, but sort of getting back to our material of ketubot, v'zanet ishtovet banav afal pi shehu chayav b'mizunotam. He can actually support his wife, that is the wife of the person who's sworn not to get any benefit from him. He can support his wife and children, even though he, that is the other guy, if you like, name B, person B can support the wife and children, even though person A is personally liable for their maintenance. And clearly there's a benefit going to person A, but the feeling must be, the wife and the children need maintenance. You can't complain if someone supports. Now, it only goes so far. Lo yazum et behemto. He doesn't feed his animals, right? His beasts. Because that really is a monetary gain. Because you feed the beasts get fatter. Effectively, that's income for the owner. It's real income for the owner. So he can't feed his beasts. Bein tmeah, bein torah, either if they're clean or either if they're kosher or not kosher. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, zanet atmeah ve'eno zanet hara. Rabbi Eliezer says he can actually feed a non-kosher animal, but he can't feed a kosher animal. Now, what is going on here? What is the difference between the kosher and the non-kosher animal? Amrullah, and they said to him, Ma bein tmeah la Torah. What's the difference between an unclean and a clean one, between a non-kosher and a kosher one? And now the Mishnah explains the whole thing. Amar lehem, she'atorah nafsha l'shamayim vegufa shelo. A kosher animal, its life, its nefesh, its soul belongs to heaven. Really interesting comment about the nature of an animal. Its soul belongs to heaven, but its body to its owner. In other words, if you feed, he can eat a kosher animal. The body belongs to its owner because he can eat it. So if you feed a kosher animal, effectively you're giving food to its owner. Yeah, you can't do that. But a non-kosher animal, its body, its soul both belong to heaven. That's why, according to Rabbi Eliezer, he can feed a non-kosher animal. And they pushed back, Amrullah, even the life of an unclean one, of a non-kosher one, belongs to heaven. Gufa shelo, and the body belongs to him. So we kind of agree, by the way, there is something about this animal that belongs to heaven. It's a very interesting, non-kind of transactional view about the status of animals. Never seen this before in the Mishnah. The nefesh, the soul, the life belongs to heaven. Vegufa shelo, the body still belongs to him because, okay, he can't eat it, but she'im yirtzeh harei mochra lagoyim or machila la klavim, because even though he can't eat it, he could, if he wanted to, sell it to non-Jews, or he could feed dogs with it. So there is some benefit in feeding your neighbor's non-kosher animal. And then the Mishnah, let's just try and attack one more Mishnah, going through all these other kinds of boundary cases. So someone has sworn not to benefit from his neighbor. It's the same situation. He enters to visit him. This is clearly a situation where this is clearly a sickness visit. Right? Well, let's read on. Omed aval lo yoshe. He stands, he doesn't sit. He can heal his body, but not his property. So this is clearly this is a sickness visit. Why can he stand but not sit? Well, the Maimonides explains that in those days, if you were sick, they would pay someone to sit with you, a bit like a paid attendant. So it seems as though we're saying, okay, if he just goes in and stands and talks to him, he's just fulfilling the mitzvah. If he actually sits with him, it's a bit like teaching him mikra, which is payable. Sitting with him is payable, just like teaching mikra is payable. Standing is not payable. That's why he can stand but not sit. And we can then understand he can heal his body because that's a mitzvah, but he can't, for example, he can't fix his property. He can bathe with him in a big bath. Because there's no kind of two people are in a big bath. There's no particular benefit to one or to the other from being together in the bath. Not in a small one. If you're together in a small one, well, effectively you make the water go up. You make the water level rise. So you are benefiting your neighbor if you jump into a small bath with him. And let's keep going. Let's keep on getting personal. And he sleeps in a bed with him. So you might, well, okay, the Mishnah says you can sleep in a bed with him, but then Rabbi Yehuda says, that works in summer. But not in rain time, not in the winter. Because he benefits him. Why? How does he do it? He warms up the bed, of course. They didn't have central heating. So if you sleep with someone in the winter, you do give them benefit. You warm up the bed. He can actually recline with him on a couch. And he can eat with him at the table. But not from the same pot. A tamchui is a giant pot, actually, that, I mean, it figures in Baba Batra as a sort of charity pot. They walk it around the village. People who had food would put in, and people who needed food would take out. But I think this is I don't think this is the charity tamchui. I think it's the serving pot at the table. And of course, by choosing which piece you take out and which piece you leave, you may be benefiting the person you're eating with. And that's why he can't do it. That's why he can't do it. But he eats with him out of the pot which goes back. This must be going back to the kitchen for refilling. If it goes back to the kitchen for refilling, there's no suggestion that he's kind of benefiting his neighbor by, taking the smaller piece. An avus is a trough. They used to put a long trough in front of the laborers. And of course, there the supply is limited. So very much, what you took affects the other people eating there. We shouldn't eat with him out of a trough put before laborers. And he can't work with him in the same furrow, Rabbi Meir, because there are all kinds of advantages in plowing the same furrow. Maybe one's making space for the other. Maybe one is holding back the corn for another. Not quite clear what they're doing, but clearly two in a furrow help one another. And the sages say, okay, they can work in the same furrow, but only at a distance.